Let's get ready for Virginia, Georgia Tech on Saturday night on the ACC Network. Chris Graham here on the podcast. And tomorrow night, Georgia Tech. Now, this is an interesting team. If you looked at their record, you'd say 9-8. You kind of look through their scores this season. They lost at home to UMass Lowell. They beat Howard by 3. This is a team that maybe is a win, even on the road. As Virginia hasn't won on the road yet this season. A true road game, Virginia 0-4. But then, okay, now let's dive a little deeper. Georgia Tech, the same team that lost to UMass Lowell, barely beat Howard by 3, has a win over Duke, lost by 5 at Duke, then had a 5-game losing streak. That was I think the Duke game was the last game in that 5-game losing streak. They broke that 5-game losing streak with a double overtime win at Clemson this week. It's a pretty good team. Damon Stoudemire, the first-year coach, still getting a group that includes 3 transfers and 2 freshmen to kind of mesh. It's an 8, 9, 10-man rotation depending on the game. And they're meshing well, I would say. Georgia Tech trailed by 9 in that game at Clemson with 1:43 to go. Their win probability was just 0.7%. Came back, rallied to force OT, and eventually won that game. So let's get into what this Georgia Tech team looks like. Miles Kelly is the leading scorer, 6'6" junior. He is one of the holdovers from the previous regime. 15.5 points a game, 6.2 rebounds per game. But his shooting numbers are interesting. 35.8% field goal, 28% from the three-point line, and also 66 or 68.8% from the foul line. Now he gets to the line 4.7 times a game, but clearly some issues with the shot. He's a volume shooter. That's why he's the leading scorer on this team. 14.5 shot attempts per game. So he'll shoot early. He'll shoot often, whether he's open or not. And that'll be a challenge there. A guy like that can get streaky. A guy like that can shoot himself and his team out of the game, depending on the night. Not very efficient, but a guy who's very efficient is one of the freshmen, Bai Dongo. Bai is a 6'9" freshman, averaging 12.7 points, 8.9 rebounds per game, 59.8% from the field. I have in my stats here the 3-point range. I'll have to update that. He can be foul prone, though. He fouled out of the Clemson game. That was one of 3 games in the last 7 that he's fouled out of. 3 of the other 4 games of that 7, he had 4 fouls. So that's a guy that, if you can get the ball in the post or get your guards in the paint and make him help, maybe he'll get himself out of the game with foul trouble. And you'll want to try to do that because he's a guy who can really put some big numbers up, particularly on the boards, 8.9 rebounds a game. Calissy Reeves, 6'7" Florida transfer. I'm probably mispronouncing that name. I've not heard it pronounced. He's a junior. Is the other double-digit scorer, 12.2 points, 45.9% field goal, 41.9% from 3. Watch him, especially on the switches. He's going to be a guy that if he gets a sliver, he's going to take it. Now, Stoudemire will go big. Only 2 guys in the rotation are under 6'6". Those 2 guys are 6'3" guards, Nathan George and Kyle Sturdivant. And both those guys are pretty efficient guys. George, 8.9 points, 4.7 assists per game. Sturdivant, 7.8 points and 3.1 assists per game. And both can shoot well from the 3-point line. Sturdivant, 34.2%. Ebenezer Duawana is an NC State transfer. You might remember that name from his couple years at NC State. He will start for this team or starts a lot for this team, but he kind of reminds me of how Virginia used to use Jack Saltz. Jack Salt could start a game and play 6 minutes, and actually that's what Duawana did the other night in a double overtime game. Started, played 6 minutes, didn't get back in the game, but he'll help set the tone for that team if that's how he's used. Tyjon Claude and Dallin Coleman are 2 guys off the bench that you will want to watch for. Claude is a 5.1 point and 5.1 rebound per game guy. And Coleman shoots 36.8% from 3 and averages 7.5 points per game in his action off the bench. So how Virginia matches up in this one? Jordan Minor, I'm hoping he was the revelation from the Virginia Tech game. He started the game at Wake, went 22 minutes in that one, actually played 26 in the win over Virginia Tech, had 16 points, 5 rebounds. Played great defense. That was even more important. He set the tone defensively, holding Lynn Kidd, who came in averaging nearly 15 points and over 7 rebounds a game, to 2 points and 2 boards in 16 minutes. The 16 minutes for Kids not because of foul trouble. He only had, I don't, he either had one foul or no fouls in the game. I'm thinking if my mind serves, but no, not foul trouble was the reason. Mike Young took him out of the game because of ineffectiveness, and that was because of Jordan Minor, who only gave up one basket in the game defensively. Now, I'm a smidge concerned. If you were paying attention, Minor left the floor at the 4:08 mark in the second half. He was limping a little bit. He actually got looked at by the training staff, came back to the bench, and was there and looked like he would be ready to check back in, just didn't get back in. So that could have been a decision because the game was when he was finally ready to get back in, it was a point in the game where Tony Bennett may have decided, hey, I want to substitute offense for defense. They're going to, make us shoot foul shots. I want to get ball handlers in the game. Maybe that's why he didn't get in. We certainly hope it wasn't because of any lingering issues that will cause him to miss this game because Minor was so effective. Blake Buchanan also effective in limited action, had 8 points in 11 minutes. But you'd love to see Minor and Buchanan be available to play the 5 spot for Virginia in this game. And I really feel like with Minor and then also Dante Harris, who was back from missing 10 games due to an injury that he suffered over the Thanksgiving break. This was a different Virginia team with those two guys on the floor for long stretches. Um, the matchup with Kelly, the leading scorer, and UVA senior guard Reese Beekman should be a fun watch. But I will mention again Dante Harris in the context of this. Dante Harris, a guy that because of his great defense, and he'd only practiced, I think Tony Bennett said a third of the Monday practice and about a half of the Tuesday practice after being out for those 6 weeks. The training staff gave him a go. The medical staff said he could go, and it was just a matter of how much Harris himself could go. He played 17 minutes, had some issues defensively early on in that game, but as the game wore on, he got his feet back under him. He had 5 points, 5 assists on the offensive end, and Harris defensively will give Reese Beekman not only a spell and a chance to sit down for some minutes so that Harris is a guy who can run the team from the point guard standpoint on offense, but he can also get in there and play the other team's best guard and give Beekman some time to be a little more relaxed on the defensive end so he can be effective down the stretch. That's the important thing that Dante Harris does. A couple important things that Dante Harris does. Ryan Dunn, want to see a little bit more out of him. Last couple of games, he's only shot the ball a total of 8 times, 4 times in each game, and he that's in 49 minutes of action. In his previous 3 games, he had averaged 14.7 points and he was 20 for 26 from the floor. Now, Dunn, who is a projected lottery pick or late lottery pick or first just outside the lottery in the first round in the 2024 draft by a lot of the mock drafts I'm looking at, is a guy that's still okay. So defensively, he's a guy that's what's getting his accolades and his attention from NBA front offices, his superior physical attributes, his great defense. His offense is still pretty limited. He's a screen and roll, and he's a guy who has to roll off those screens, get pocket passes. His 3 point shot is inconsistent. He's in the low 20s on that. His free throw shooting has taken a hit of late. He's not a guy who's going to hit the mid-range jumper on you. He's pretty much a guy and he really doesn't create his own shot off the dribble. He's a guy that catches those passes and throws down. You'd like to see more from him in that respect, and maybe even see if he can knock down an open jumper every once in a while. He makes the team more effective because right now, guys can lay off of him in that respect. Another guy you want to see be more effective in this game and just in general is Isaac McNeely. McNeely is a statistical enigma. He's averaging double digits. In fact, 11.4 points per game has him second on this team in scoring, but he's only been in double digits 6 times in 16 outings this season. He's either feast or famine. Right now, we were in the famine phase. He had a couple of 22-point games you might remember back in December. Then he had a stretch of, I think it was 5 games, maybe 6 in single digits. Then back-to-back 18-point games. We're back in the single-digit range again. In his last 2, he's had 8 points in each of the last 2 games. 2 of 10 shooting in the loss at Wake Forest. 3 of 8 shooting in the win over Virginia Tech on Wednesday. But certainly a guy that you're going to want to see hit some shots, get especially early to get into a rhythm. And this Virginia team playing on the road again, 0-4 in true road games, all those losses by double digits, 1-5 away from JPJ. I think that's right. Well, I guess Yeah, 1-5. Yeah, actually 2-5 away from JPJ. The win at in Charlotte against Florida early in the season was a neutral site game, and then the 1-1 stretch down in Fort Myers included the win over West Virginia. So 2-5 away from JPJ, but neither of those were true road games. This Virginia team is obviously going to need to be able to win some games on the road to play in the correct postseason that we want them to play in, the NCAA tournament. And so a chance here against a pretty good Georgia Tech team. Don't let that 9-8 record fool you. One win over Duke, a tough loss to Duke, a win at Clemson in double overtime. This Georgia Tech team is nothing to overlook as far as that goes. Ken Palm is the only thing I've looked at in terms of a projection for how this game could go, and it has Ken Palm has the analytical model there has Virginia winning this one by 1 point. So obviously, expect if you know this one to be pretty close as far as that goes. We will have live coverage post game as soon as the game is over tomorrow night. Game starts at 6 on the ACC network. We're hoping we'll actually be able to watch the whole game on the ACC network. There's a 4 o'clock game. It's part of a triple header. You may be stuck, and this is I'm not looking forward to. I'm like you. I'm not going down to it, or like I'm sure a lot of you. I'm not going down to Atlanta, and so I'll be watching the game on TV. The last time I was tuning in on ACC Network, and the game started late on TV because of a previous game going over. ACC Network X was hard to sign into. It's really frustrating, at least for me, and maybe this is the case for a lot of you guys and gals listening or watching on YouTube. But yeah, you can't. I mean, at least my experience, you can't tune into like you can't log into the game until the game starts, quote unquote, and then it takes a little bit of time for it to heat up. I usually have stat broadcast up. UVA Athletics, the UVA Athletics app will show you the stat broadcast stats. Those are live basically as soon as a basket goes in. It seems like within a couple seconds it goes up. And I mean, we might be a minute into the game before we can get the ACC Network X or ESPN Plus to heat up and come on. So any case, we'll root for whoever the 4 o'clock game is to not stretch out. Certainly no double overtimes like the other night when Georgia Tech and Clemson played till almost midnight. We'll miss the whole first half if that's the case, but no, we'll have coverage after the game, and then eventually, the analysis, my five observations column. Then I'll transcribe Tony Bennett's post game interview, get his thoughts as well. Trying to think anything else. Earlier this week, in addition to the coverage and post game coverage of the Virginia Tech game, we had a long look. It was about a 1,700 word or so piece looking at the Virginia football roster. Now that we're not done with the transfer portal season, certainly, but the Virginia coach Tony Elliott has filled a lot of the needs. Not to say that there aren't a few more he might want to address, but needs at wide receiver, two tight ends, filling up that room, another quarterback in the mix. Uh, Addition by not losing guys on the defensive line. The defensive line should be a position of strength. One addition on the offensive line, and then a bunch of guys staying there as well. The secondary really beefing up. So we have an in-depth look at what the roster is looking like as we're getting ready to head into the spring. And so, love you to check that out. Put a lot of work into that the last few weeks, busy on the transfer portal. Instead of just looking at it piecemeal like we've done, we thought it'd be a great idea to just kind of put it all in one place. And so there it is. Also a piece looking at if you're a UVA basketball season ticket holder, how you may have already gotten the email from Virginia Athletics Foundation, but it looks like your parking passes might cost you a lot more next year, and we have an insight on that as well. So, hey, if you have any questions for me, any comments, of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can comment there. The comments goes directly to me. I tend to try to respond to those on there, or at least like them, or acknowledge them in some way, right? But you can do that. You can email me at chris@augustafreepress.com. Very blessed that, gosh, we've got dozens of folks who email me regularly with either their thoughts on a basketball game or a football game back in football season, recruiting, other issues around those programs, other programs in the UV athletics tree. And those folks, if you're watching or if you're listening, you can vouch for. I'll respond back to you, and we can have some good email conversations. And sometimes we even get to meet at the games. But feel free to drop me a line there too. Really like to hear from you, what you're thinking, what you want us to look into in UVA athletics. Again, that's Chris at AugustaFreePress.com.